Okay, welcome. I'm here with our guest, Jennifer Savran Kelly, the author, and she lives in Ithaca, New York, where she writes, binds books, and works as a production editor at Cornell University Press. And she is here to talk about her debut novel, Endpapers. And Jennifer is actually my first cousin. So that's our connection.
Yes,
And
hi.
and I have to say that, Jen, when I first heard that you wrote a book, um, I thought my book has a cousin. That's what I was thinking. I was like, my book has a book cousin. That is so cool.
That's fantastic.
I was really excited. And
That
then,
is very cool. I love that.
um, so that's that. And then, um, I pre-ordered it right away because I really was excited. I wanted to read it. And finally I got the book in the mail and I couldn't put it down. So it was so good and it was
Thank
so
you.
really like I was like, wow, this is really good. I just loved reading it. And I sent it to my parents. They read it. Then my sister, I like passed it around and we all loved it. So before I continue, would you mind telling us a little bit about what the book is about?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you. It is so nice to talk to you. I love this idea that your book has a cousin, and now I feel like my book has a cousin
I
too.
know, right?
So thank you. That's wonderful. Yeah, it's very sweet. So what is End Papers about? End Papers is about a genderqueer bookbinder and book artist who is feeling pretty stuck in their artwork, in their love life, and basically just in their life in general. And one day at work at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, she's repairing an old book, and she finds underneath the end paper of the book a torn off cover of a lesbian pulp novel. And on the back is a love letter written in German. And she discovers that it's written from a teenage girl to another girl. And she becomes very interested in this letter, both because of the illustration that is on the back of it, on the cover of that pulp novel, which is of a woman looking into a mirror and seeing a man's face, and also by the fact that it's a lesbian love letter and that it was written around the 1950s. And so because she's feeling very stuck in her life, and it's post 9/11 New York City, that is the setting, she sort of goes in search, trying to find the person who wrote this letter, hoping that it can help her make some sense out of her own life and maybe get unstuck. And so that's sort of the premise of the book and where it takes off from. And assuming that that you're an artist and your podcast is about art, there's a lot about artwork in the book. And
Mhm.
so just wanted to mention that as well for your listeners.
Yeah. And that's kind of why, I wanted to talk to you on here because there is a connection. Um, when the setting of the book happens right after 9/11. And when I was in um, New York City, I went to New York City back in 2000 when I was in high school. And it was the summer between 11th and 12th grade for me. And I wanted to take a pre-college summer program at the School of Visual Arts. So I was in New York for 3 weeks, and that's the time you were working at the Met in
Yeah.
the conservation department as a bookbinder, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
just like your character Dawn. So when I was there, the two of us, me and you, we met up a few times in the city, and you even came to my art show at SVA. And I went with you to see where you worked in the Met. You took me there to check it out, a little behind the scenes, which I thought was so cool. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was amazing. And this was, a couple years before 9/11. But when I was reading your book, I was able to clearly picture the scenes where Dawn was working as a bookbinder because you had taken me there, like what 20 something years ago. So that just,
Right.
when I was reading the book, I thought the book was great, but also I was like, wait a second, like I know where that was. I was here. This this was really cool. So that you were writing about the time when I was in New York. Um,
Right.
so really that's why I thought this would be a great connection for us to talk on this podcast, which is about art. But you're right. There's a lot about drawing in here and or about art. And I guess okay, so your main character, Dawn, the whole premise, she was stuck as an artist. So when I read this book, I remembered that you also took art classes, I think at SVA also. So it was after I had
Yes.
left for the summer. I had gone back to school and you spoke in the book. So did Dawn. She took art classes. So I wanted to know if you could talk about that, like what your connection to art is, what classes did you take?
Yeah, I actually grew up less as a writer and more making art. And I never really thought of myself as an artist, but I dabbled always. I always had a sketchbook. I always had a book to teach me how to draw better. I always was just kind of interested in the visual world, and I was interested in calligraphy as well. And so as I got older and I graduated from college, I became really interested in the book arts. It was sort of a marriage of my love of reading and literature and my love of visual art. And so I actually, the first place that I took classes after I graduated from college, and I did not study art in college. So my first real experience focusing on art was after college at the Center for Book Arts in New York City. And I had to, sharpen my drawing skills if I wanted to make artist books, which I did, which for people who don't know are basically just works of art in book form. And that could mean many things because a book can be so many things. So I really was interested in using some of the drawing that I had done, trying to write a little bit, stretch myself and combine those things to make artist books. And so I realized as I was going through that process that one of the things that I didn't feel very strong with was drawing, because I had never had any real formal training. And so I was really inspired to take a drawing class at SVA. And it was a really interesting experience because, well, first I did painting, I think. I know I did painting and drawing. I don't remember which came first, but it might have been painting. And I had this idea that once I got a paintbrush in my hand, I could really express myself. You have those, you see in the movies or whatever, people just sort of like going with a brush, and just letting it out. And I thought, that's what I want to do. And then I got to my painting class and it was very much like, okay, make a little stroke. Now mix your color. Now make another stroke. Now mix your color. And I thought, oh, wow, this is not,
You're not
this is
like
not what
throwing
I
paint
thought
on the
it was.
canvas. Right.
Yeah. It was so fussy and I didn't feel like I was good at it. And so those two things together just made me feel like, okay, I'm going to go back to drawing and printmaking. And so I took this drawing class and it wasn't what I expected at all. It felt a lot, I guess, freer in a sense, in the way that I thought painting would, where my teacher, for example, and this is actually in the book, and I promise the book is completely fiction, but there are a few elements from my real life. And one of them is, oh, wait, this is not in this book. It's in something else I wrote. One of my teachers, or my teacher at SVA, he would tell us, start with the inside corner of the eye when you're drawing somebody's face, and everything you need is there. And it'll just, everything else will come out from there. And I just, it just sort of confused me, but it sort of freed me a little bit. And so his style was much more just sort of have at it, just go, just play, just do it. And he had very expressive, pencil strokes or charcoal strokes. And so that was sort of became what I thought that painting was going to be. And we had these very large pads that we drew on. And I was just, my drawings were not very good, but I felt like I was just going there and really able to sort of express myself and play. And I don't think that I learned a lot about drawing in the end. But I just recently went through all the drawings I made in that class, which I'd forgotten about because it was so long ago. And I couldn't believe the volume of work that I created in that class. And I think that was pretty remarkable. So anyway, then I sort of went back to bookbinding, but more as a business. And then my son was born. 15 years ago, and it was very difficult. It was very difficult to do anything that required setting up and cleaning up. And I don't know how you have found that because you have two kids, but it was like I would,
Not
by the
easy.
time I set up and cleaned up, like I had maybe 10 minutes to work or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
It's
was rough.
it's not easy with kids for sure.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So I started writing more
Mm-hmm.
seriously. I had done a lot of writing by then, but nothing really formal. And so I thought, well, I don't need to set up or clean up. You know, if my son's napping, I could just take the full 20 minutes and just sit down and write, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and just stop whenever he wakes up or whatever. So that was how I started writing. And so when I wrote Endpapers, it was a very long way of saying it was really my way to it was like my love letter to art. I couldn't really make art anymore, and I didn't have the resources to make the kind of art that I wanted to make. And um but writing a book about an artist who was a little bit stuck but finding their way, um and sort of having that having that experience be intertwined with somebody figuring out their gender identity. To me it was like when you make art, it's so in the body.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much of the body and it's in the body, and it's like it's a very tactile thing. And so I wanted this sort of the unblocking of the art and the unblocking of the gender identity to sort of not be separate.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was how I approached that character, and and the writing about art. And I just yeah it just and I just came from my need to create.
No, I think that's amazing. That's such an interesting story, like you try one thing and it, for whatever reason, either doesn't work out or takes you in a different direction. And yeah, I think I love that how you explained how you connected the characters' struggles with what's happening in her art. And then when she does, you know, kind of figure things out at the end, the mystery is solved. And then I liked how she figured out the ending of how she was going to make her art. She collaborated, right, with other
Hmm.
artists, and I thought that was really
Yeah.
interesting because that's such a neat way to figure it out, and you to get help from other, not just help but collaboration. You're not just by
Yeah.
yourself. So that was a neat ending. I was wondering how she was gonna get unstuck with her art. It was really
I
cool.
felt like she was, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I felt like she was very in her head the whole time, you know,
Mm,
and she was very untrusting of other people throughout a lot of the novel. And I feel like the thing about collaboration is it requires you to give up control.
mm-hmm,
It requires you to listen and
mm,
let other people in, and accept what they have to offer you. And so that also felt really important to me for her character growth. And I guess I just want to say quickly that I use she, her pronouns for Dawn, even though she's genderqueer, because the book takes place in 2003 when
mm,
they, them pronouns were not in
mm-hmm.
mainstream use. And so
Right.
my editor and I decided to use she, her pronouns for Dawn. So, yeah.
No, I think that's really neat. I love the details that you put in, and the research you did, and it was so, like, I just kept thinking about it even after I read it, and I just you
Thank you.
know I feel like a connection because I was there around the same time. So really it really resonated with me. I loved it. And um I'm wondering, so you're a full-time, not a full-time writer, but you focus on
No.
writing. So do you still draw at all, or no, you said that's kind of done and you're doing writing, or has it come
Well,
back?
it's funny. You reached out at a funny time. Yeah, because it was all done because just out of necessity, I work full time. I have a child and I write.
Right.
So it just doesn't leave any time for anything. But one of the things that I have been avoiding for a very long time is going through all of the things in my bindery, which is in my basement, and getting rid of a lot of stuff. And
Mm,
it's been just too hard for me to do. So I have avoided it. And this summer, one of the reasons that I found all of those old drawings I did at SVA is because I finally, with the support of my husband, decided to just go down there, face all of the unfinished projects and all of the things that I probably won't do.
Oh,
And
don't tell me you threw it out.
I threw some things out.
Okay.
I kept some things.
No. Okay.
But I'm feeling very inspired. And so my friend just invited me to take a drawing class with her, and I had to say no because I have some conflicts with the schedule. But I very much intend, for those who don't know, it's the Jewish New Year. And one of my sort of things, one of my goals for the coming year is to take a drawing class or a printmaking class, and to get back, just for my own personal joy, to making some visual art again. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, as an art teacher, I'm excited to hear that. Like,
Yeah, I bet.
but yeah, I mean, there are so many different ways you could start with art. Like you started at, the painting class where it was very methodical. But I've heard of art teachers who, you know, it's all about the emotion. You take the color and you smear it with your hand, and there's so many different avenues you could go with it. But yeah, I mean, if you want, they teach it to you because you have to know about color theory, and instead of just, and then you could kind of go. But yeah, I think that's fantastic that you're doing it again. Because
Yeah.
I mean, I'm excited. Like,
Yeah, yeah. What kinds of classes are you teaching? I wish I could, like, coming up, I wish I could take.
yeah, I
You
know.
don't do any online, do you?
I'm gonna try to put some online. I'm still figuring that out, but I'm doing. I focus on working with kids,
Mm-hmm.
and I try to do a good mix of technical skill
Yeah.
and creativity, because I think you can't really, if you want to get creative, I think you do need those skills. So I'm pretty big on that. I do painting classes, drawing classes, and I'm gonna start online classes for kids, like maybe like a drawing club, but I'm still figuring out the schedule. But yeah,
Yeah.
if you ever do, I'll let you know. But no, I
You'll be
think
the
that's
big kid in the class.
no. Well, maybe I'll do an adult class. I'll separate the kids and the adults. That's true. Good point. But yeah, I think it's like, I see, because I taught at a magnet school, so people think, oh, you're going to judge everybody who's not like good, but that's not true. Like I don't. I really love everyone's marks, and you start with where you are and what you do. So
Mhm.
I think that's great, and I think it's really cool that your character was an artist. Um,
Mhm.
so I'm wondering, and I love that you're just doing it for your personal enjoyment. There's because you enjoy it, and that's one great thing about art is you can do it for your whole life. And I feel like you're never bored. I mean, you could do that with writing too. You could sit and jot things down, but it's so great. You take your sketchbook and you're never bored. Um, can I ask if you are working on anything else with your writing? Are there any more books coming?
I am. Yeah, I hope so. Right now, it's in very early stages, so it's nowhere. I'm not thinking about publishing yet, but I'm writing a book that's sort of inspired by The Handmaid's Tale and the movie from 1980, 9 to 5, with Dolly
Really?
Parton and Lily Tomlin and Jane Fonda. Yeah,
Oh my
it's
gosh.
sort of like a queer, speculative, near future, and it's feminist, and it's serious, but it's got some antics. So that's where the 9 to 5 comes in. Um, I don't think that I should say more at this
Okay.
point, but that is what I'm working on now. And I do have a book out on submission, which I'm also not supposed to talk about, but it's
Okay.
okay. But it's something that I actually wrote with my son a couple of
Oh.
years ago, and it's a fantasy novel for middle grade readers. And my son has
Oh.
Tourette syndrome, so the lead character in the book has Tourette syndrome,
Oh
and
wow.
he narrates the book.
Uh-huh.
And so it's this fantasy novel narrated by a 12-year-old boy with Tourette syndrome. And so we put the vocal tics in the narrative so that when
Mm.
you're reading, you have to sort of stop and tick along with the
Oh wow.
main character.
That's
Um,
amazing.
yeah, so I'm really hoping that that one, and the reason I feel comfortable talking about that is because if that doesn't get picked up traditionally by a traditional publisher, then we'll probably self-publish it,
Hmm.
so that at least it's available for people in the Tourette's community and anyone
Yeah.
who would want to read it. So
That's
that's sort of like the book of my heart right
that's
now.
amazing. I love that you collaborated with your son, and this is so great.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And
Yeah.
oh, I can't wait to read it however it's published. That's amazing.
Thank you.
And I'm wondering also if well, I do have a question. It's not really about art, but I like to know how characters' names are chosen because it tells you something about them. And I was trying to figure out, Dawn, if it was like, you know, what the connection was, if you want to tell us.
Sure. That character, that name, sort of, it started as a name that was sort of a placeholder. And then
Hmm.
as I learned more and more about the name, it solidified. So the reason it started as a placeholder was I actually knew somebody in college named Dawn who I was in college in the late 90s. And so again, people were not using they, them pronouns or talking about being non-binary. And so she used she, her pronouns. But I really believe that if I met her today, she'd probably be a they, them. She might, or be trans masculine.
Hmm.
But she really embodied this idea that you could be a very beautiful feminine woman and also a very beautiful man just by putting on a baseball cap. It was disarming. And so I just thought of her when I started writing the character immediately. But so that became the placeholder name. And I thought, well, but I'll change it, as I go. But then I really liked the connotation of, the dawn, a new day dawning.
Hmm.
And so that started to sit really well
Okay.
with me. And then I also learned that the Hebrew word for dawn, which is shahar, is used for both boys and girls.
Hmm. Oh,
So as I
that is
kept learning
interesting.
more things about the name, I kept thinking, okay, that name just needs to stay. That's the
Oh,
name of the
cool. So it was
character.
like a placeholder, but it was like it just came to you and that was that, and you figured it
Yeah,
out. Very
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
And do you have any advice for um, anyone who wants to be a writer or pursue their art?
Yeah, yeah. I've always been of the mindset that you do what you're called to do. And so, like you were saying before with art, I never really had a strong desire to show my art in a big way. It really was something that I just did for myself. And when I started writing, for whatever reason, it felt important to me at that time in my life to write, to try to publish.
Hmm.
And but I approached it very much the same way, which was this is for me, this is something that I need to do. But if I want to publish, then I have to sort of set my ego aside and I have to approach it with a learner's mind, a learner's mindset. And so to just ask people for feedback. Just go to anyone I trusted, whether it was just a friend who'd been writing longer than I had, or I happen to live by a couple of universities, so we have creative writing professors. Was there somebody there I might hook into, take a class with? So basically, just looked at it as I'm not going to be good at this when I start, but I can learn. And for years, that's just how I approached it. And
Hmm.
I took the ego out of submitting things for publication. I took it out of the writing. It wasn't really until I published a novel that started to become problematic.
Hmm.
I managed to kind of keep that mindset throughout. So I think really just do it because you love it and know that there are people out there that love it too and will want to help you if you approach them respectfully and, some people will say no, but some people
Right.
will say yes.
So you
Yeah.
didn't feel completely alone on this in this
Right.
process. That's yeah, that's
Right.
important because as artists we could feel alone, but you asked for help. And I like what you said about putting your ego aside because, you're doing it for yourself, but um it's, for a novel, you want people to read it and enjoy it.
Mhm.
So there are things, right, that you'd have to learn and I think that's so great. And
Yeah. Once it's out, it's hard to not get caught up on like, is it selling enough copies? Is it getting
mhm.
enough attention? Is it getting the right attention? So all of those things, like it's so you have to learn. I have to relearn right now to set all of that aside and just keep doing the work that I love. Yeah.
Well, I'm a huge fan. As soon as I finished it, I was like, I could see this as a movie because it was so clear it was so exciting and interesting. And there's like history and, you know, I thought it was great. I see it as a movie.
Thank you.
One day. Like, and where can we find your book and learn more about you?
Oh, so I have a website, jennifersavrankelly.com. My book is available everywhere books are sold. So bookshop.org, your local indie, I hate to say it, but Amazon does have it, Barnes and Noble. So it should be available anywhere you can get books. And my website has links to, I think it has links to purchase it. Those may have come down just because there was a merger with my publisher. But I have interviews there. I have other writing there that's linked. So that's a good place to go.
And your website, can you tell us the address?
Yeah, jennifersavrankelly.com.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This was amazing having you here and so great to speak with you.
Thank you. Yeah, this was a real treat. And I'm so excited for your podcast and can't wait to hear who else you interview.
Thank you. Take care.
You might see a sweet purple flower or a magical rainbow sky. Then a shiny balloon or a bright yellow moon catches your eye. There are so many colorful places to be, so many curious faces to see. And wouldn't it be nice to draw every wonderful thing you saw? Color, form, line, space, shape, texture, and value. With these elements of art, you can draw what's in your heart. And that's a beautiful place to start. You might see a shimmery goldfish in a shimmering goldfish bowl. You might meet a goat or a pony whose coat is blacker than coal. But how do you draw them and where to begin? The page is so empty, your pencil's so thin. Well, you know there's a way to draw every wonderful thing you saw. Color, form, line, space, shape, texture, and value. With these elements of art, you can draw what's in your heart. And that's a beautiful place to start. Color, form, line, space, shape, texture, and value. With these elements of art,